Thank you for joining me for brute force hacking and analysis of attacks and defense. We're going to go over a couple slides on what is brute force. We're going to go over what type of software is being used to help people who are malicious in attacking with brute force. We'll go over detecting brute force with systems and how does one protect not only a system but protect themselves from brute force. Brute force attacks are trial and error guessing attacks on a system where an attacker will try to guess at a password to try to log in with your credentials. They may employ software in order to crack your credentials, or they may steal encrypted passwords and then try to decrypt them using brute force. Brute force is a very simple attack. It's unsophisticated. There's not much to it. It's some simple algorithms most of the time in order to generate passwords that they will try in order to attack a system or attack a username. There are different types of brute force attacks. There are simple attacks, which are the oldest type of attack, in which multiple combinations of passwords are tried. So if you have, let's say, an 8-character password, and it's only lowercase, alphabetical, then the person would try to create as many combinations as possible of those 8 characters and try to use those to log in to your account. It's a slower method because obviously more than 8 characters can be used nowadays, and it can be uppercase, lowercase. You can add numbers and you can add special characters. And so nowadays simple attacks aren't very efficient because it can take an extreme amount of time for somebody to try all combinations. Dictionary attacks are more likely, and what a dictionary attack is, it's a library of passwords or common combinations that users have used in the past that people have successfully used in cracking an account, or just common words or phrases, dates, stuff like that. So the attacker will use this library to assist in trying to crack your password because it already has a library filled with passwords to try that are some of the most common ones that are used. And then a reverse attack, its common password is used. Okay, so they'll choose a specific password and they'll try it versus multiple accounts on a system. And they may use a library for this, so they may, let's say there's only 10 accounts on the system, they'll try the same password for all 10, move on to the next password that they have in the library, and continue from there, and continue over and over. A lot of times reverse attack happens when a hacker knows the password but doesn't necessarily know the user name for the account. There's a lot of software that is used for brute force attacks. We'll go over those. So one is AirCrackNG. Now this software is used against Wi-Fi's, and it's used against different protections like WEP, WPA, PA2, PSK, and so it's really for hacking into Wi-Fi devices, Wi-Fi routers, and it does use a library for these types of attacks. So it's always good to change the password on your Wi-Fi routers and any other devices, networking devices that you get, because these libraries are usually filled with previously known passwords. Another software is John the Ripper, and it's an all-purpose tool. It's well known. It's been around for a long time, and so it's used on multiple different platforms. So it can be used against 15 different platforms: Linux, Windows, Apple OS. And what it does is it has an auto hash detection system built in, and can detect how many characters that are allowed on the server or system, and then go from there. Other software used is Rainbow Crack, Loftcrack, Offcrack, which uses rainbow tables and libraries for cracking into the system. Rainbow tables are pre-computed tables for caching the output of cryptography hash functions, so it works against hashes. Now, the problem with these rainbow tables is, or well, the good thing, I guess, would be that if the hashes are salted, then rainbow tables are no good, because the rainbow tables are good at producing or figuring out passwords as long as they know the exact length of the hash or the hashes. So if it knows that it has to be, the password is 8 characters, it knows how many hashes in length, then these rainbow tables are useful against such a thing. But if you salt it, which is adding hashes in between or in random spots to trick these kinds of systems, rainbow tables are 100% ineffective against such things. When it comes to detecting brute force attacks, standard IDS should be set up to look for inconsistencies and also log any failures that seem suspicious, or foreign IP addresses too. The problem is that some brute force attacks, such as disciplined brute force attacks, have ways of getting around this. They use multiple IP addresses. They use bots with these IP addresses, so you could be attacked by hundreds, if not thousands, of bots from multiple IP addresses, and that can trick the system. The system may just see it as, okay, these are just login failures from different accounts, from different IPs. One of the issues with that is it's hard to go about stopping this or preventing this. Another problem is ephemeral brute force attacks. Now, just like DBF, EBF uses multiple IP addresses and bots, but what they do different is an IDS might detect DBF because the patterns are the same with the attacks from the bots. But with EBF, they randomize the patterns to prevent detection. So instead of bots attacking at specific intervals, they may be randomized intervals, or only try to log into the account from one specific bot twice, and from a different one 3 times, and from a different bot 1 time, so that the system doesn't throw a flag saying that, hey, this IP address has failed to log in 8 times. Instead, maybe it just failed to log in once or twice. Now, what do we do about protecting the system? There are multiple routes we can go, and some of these should be added together for further protection. One route is locking accounts when you find out that brute force is being used against the account. Now, we don't necessarily want to do that because it can prevent actual users from logging in. So it creates a denial of service, and a denial of service attack. This does not deter attackers from continuing in the future or right after you unlock the account. Another problem is a lot of root or admin accounts are unlockable because they always need access to the system. And so if you're locking accounts that are being brute force attacked, it makes those accounts, the root and admin, easy targets, since those will be the only ones left that are open to be attacked. Another method is called device cookies, and it's where an additional authenticator is placed on user devices. So if you set up an account and are authenticated, a digital cookie is placed on your account or your web browser to authenticate that you are who you say you are. So next time you log in, even if it's a failure, it doesn't throw a red flag because it sees the cookie and says, okay, this is a person who just failed to log in. Now, if you don't have that cookie and he fails to log in, then the system throws a flag saying, this person has no cookie, this could be a brute force attack, and so it watches it. Now, of course, the client could always wipe cookies by clearing caches, or they could use different devices instead and fail to log in, so there are those issues. But every time a user re-logs in successfully and is authenticated, a new cookie should be placed onto the user's device. Another system is CAPTCHA, which is a test that identifies whether it's a human or a computer trying to log in. Now these are simple and yet very effective in determining if somebody is who they say they are, such as a human, or if it's a bot that's trying to log in. And the tests are multi-dimensional usually, so with a lot of CAPTCHAs, it'll say, an example would be, click on all the images that have a bike in it. And most of the images don't have a bike, but a couple of them do. Now this is really difficult for computers to determine, but it's very simple for humans. So CAPTCHA tests should always be almost 100% successful when it comes to humans attempting it, and almost 100% unsuccessful when it comes to computers trying to log in. And then another one would be IP blocking. Again, this could create a denial of service issue from clients or users of a system. And attackers can always get different IP addresses. Another method for protecting systems is page redirection. So the system can be set up to redirect somebody to a different page and also give a code that says login successful. But on that page, it actually tells a user why they were redirected to this page, stating you failed to log in. If you're having issues, please retry your password. But a computer or a bot sees the code that was thrown that says successful login, and this can sometimes confuse a bot and they don't know what to do because they successfully logged in, but they're not actually in the system. So what do we do about protecting passwords? We should always encrypt passwords. All systems have built-in encryption that you can allow, so all passwords should always be encrypted, and always one should protect the password file. This is what attackers are really after. If they can get the password file and look at the hash table in the password file, they can compare it to their hash table, and they can essentially figure out what the password actually is. Another method for protecting passwords in the system or protecting data in the system is honey encryption, and that is where it creates plausible false passwords or plausible false numbers. So it's very effective when it comes to protecting credit card and social security numbers because it's all numbers and it's a specific length. So it's very simple for honey encryption to create plausible falsehoods of those. And so when these people finally do get to them, they're not actually anybody's information. Another way to protect passwords on the system is called salting. It's where you add hashes, random hashes into your encrypted passwords. This way, if they do get stolen, it's much harder for attackers to figure out, okay, what is the actual password? So they get incorrect passwords. Now, the issue with this is obviously adding salt or hashes will create more data, so you need more storage. Honeypots can be used similar to honey encryption, except for its random false passwords. It slows down attackers, deters attackers, and sometimes makes it easier for attackers to maybe grab those passwords and then try them. Um, this way, the attacker takes more time to actually get into the system. Again, since you're making more passwords, there can be storage issues. Now, what can one do to protect themselves? First of all, create a stronger password. Stronger password, use special characters, numbers, upper and lowercase. Increase the length and difficulty for attackers. Don't use dates, don't use names, don't use cities, don't use common everyday words. And actually creating a sentence that is also misspelled slightly is a good way to create passwords, but also include special characters and numbers. Avoid using the same password for multiple logins, because if an attacker discovers that your password works for one account, they'll try it for all of your accounts. And avoid using the same username for multiple logins, because it'll make it easier for attackers to try multiple websites with the same username and password combination. In conclusion, brute force attacks, trial and error method, simple yet dangerous, and effective enough to still be used. Many different applications of system cracking used by both attackers and defenders. System protection IDS useful, especially ones that learn, like AI IDS. Detection possible, but can be difficult, and policies and mechanisms that defend but do not cause a denial of service should be used. Password protection, use a longer length, higher complexity, avoid dates, names, other common words, and sentences with misspellings are most effective.